So before we get into today's video, we're gonna talk about money. We're gonna talk about prize money, okay? Because there's been a lot of chit chatter going online over the course of the last weekend regarding two events that took place this weekend. One of them was the weightlifting Grand Prix in Qatar, where conversation was had around a particular lifter in the 89 kilo class who clean and jerked a world record. He came third in that Grand Prix and he earned a total of $250 US. Now Qatar's a pretty rich country, so I'd say that's pretty stingy prize money, but to be honest, that's more prize money than is normally given away in weightlifting full stop. I think my best prize that I ever won in my 20 years was a little plastic medal. But on the other hand, and the key reason why we're doing this video today is to talk about the Dubai Fitness Championships, which is Dubai's near Qatar, pretty close, okay? And they're both known for being pretty loaded. Now, in this Dubai Fitness Championships, let me just talk you through the prize money here. First place won $50,000 US. Second place, $30,000 US. Third place, $20,000 US. And even sixth place won $2,500 US in this championships. But it gets better. They get paid out for event wins as well. And each event, $72,000 US got paid out for various places per event. Now it gets better, you see, because one of the events in this particular CrossFit Championships was an out-and-out classical Olympic weightlifting competition where the athletes had to compete in the snatch and the clean and jerk. And they ended up, the winner of this event made more money than the person who won the Grand Prix. I reckon they probably got about $2,000 for winning this competition. And it was just a small part of what they had to do as part of the whole Dubai Fitness Championships, was do the weightlifting event. And they won more than they got in the Grand Prix. And I was actually just chatting to Zach Tallender and indirectly chatting to the Sickest Strength guys. And I was like, what if in 2024, we held a weightlifting competition and we put up real prize money? Like imagine 10 grand for the winner of a weightlifting competition and it was done on a particular formula. Guys, comment below if this is something that you want to see happen and get us to try and organize next year a new format of Olympic weightlifting competition with real prize money for the athletes. Let us know. I'd even make it divisional so that people that are new to the sport could compete and have some fun too. Anyway, we're gonna get into today's video and we're gonna be doing an analysis of some of the lifts from this year's Dubai Fitness Championships. There's some amazing lifts in there. In particular, Ricky Garrod was back. Roman Krenikov, who actually won the whole competition, amongst loads of other great athletes too. So I'm gonna run through this analysis and hopefully there's gonna be some good bits for you guys to take on board here, which is gonna help you be a better Olympic weightlifter too. So the first lift that we're actually gonna be reviewing in today's analysis video is the guy who actually finished down in 8th in this event, which was Roman Krenikov. Now, Roman Krenikov actually finished first in the overall championships, but 8th in this event, and he's never really been known for his skills in his Olympic weightlifting. Go back 2-3 years ago, and he would struggle to clean and jerk 140. So in this particular event, we saw him go for 160 clean and jerk. First of all, what I want to look at is his initial setup position straight off the bat. Now, this for me is less than ideal. What you'll notice is right from the setup is this rounded back. If you were doing anything other than weightlifting, i.e. deadlift or powerlifting, a slightly rounded back in the initial phase of the pull, absolutely fine, okay? But for Olympic weightlifting, if you've struggled to keep the spine in a neutral position from the setup, it commonly will cause you to fold in your receiving position. So, i.e. when we get to this point here, and I'm not gonna rush ahead, but the likelihood of us dropping chest in this position will increase massively if we struggle to get into this good set position. But not only that, for us to be able to hit full extension at the top of the lift. So this is something that I see that Roman potentially struggles with a little bit from a mobility standpoint. Naturally, what you'll see he does is starts with a really high hip position, which I think is good when you're doing clean and jerk. I like to see a high hip position and I like to see knees and arms in line and a very vertical shin position here, which is great. It means that when we're initiating the lift from the floor, what you'll see is Roman manages to keep the bar tracking nice and straight off the floor, and it's staying over midfoot at this point. Regardless of his inability to set his back really well, he does keep the bar tracking over the midfoot at this point till he gets to the knee, which is really good. As a result of him not being able to set the back, you will see that the early arm bends start to come into play here a little bit through the middle phase of the lift. So this will generally take a lot of the weight in the upper body. But through the middle phase of the lift, again, at the point where I refer to as the power position, you'll see that he's massively come onto his toes early before extension. This could be a result of, like I said, that poor start position, or he may just be transferring his weight early into extension because he's finding this difficult in the pulling phase. Naturally, you'll see athletes when they struggle from a strength standpoint through the middle phase of lift, start to open up or extend early. So this is when the shoulders start to come back at this point because they're struggling to hold a good solid set position over the bar. And that's why we can see here the shoulders have slipped back behind the bar. Regardless of this early arm bend, the shoulders kind of slipping back, what I want you to watch is what's happening during this extension phase of lift. What you'll see that Roman does really well, regardless, is let the bar brush up the thigh during this middle phase. I like to see good contact and almost like a drag through this middle phase of lift. And this helps ensure that through extension, again, the bar starts traveling vertically at this point. So regardless of that early arm bend, regardless of that early extension, some of the foundations of this lift are still really good in terms of where the bar's tracking and where the body position is. After he hits extension, what you'll notice here is the legs don't completely open up. Again, this will be quite common on a sub-maximal clean and jerk attempt for a lot of lifters. What you will notice is that the bar height is still ample in order for him to get into his receiving position, and it is still relatively close to the body, which again is the most important thing here. We're trying to keep that bar over this midfoot as we touched on previously. As he turns over into his receive position, one thing that I really like that Roman does is he maintains his full grip on the bar at this point. Now, you've heard me bang on about this in previous technique analysis videos, how I really promote people maintaining a full grip through the turnover, because it really helps with what we're seeing here as he's coming into his catch position, regardless if he releases it now, actually meeting the bar well, which is important for timing. His elbows are now through at this point. The feet, let's have a look at what they do, have moved out really nicely into the catch position, which is good. And he's maintained that hook grip. We know that he struggles from a mobility standpoint in his front rack position because we saw that in the setup position. So you see the rounding in the mid to upper back. As a result of this, this will cause the elbows to drop, and there's not a great deal of distance between knee and elbow here at this point. If the knee and the elbow was to touch at this point in Olympic weightlifting, this would actually be a no lift. Very close on the edges there of this not being a no lift. Puts a huge amount of pressure through the midline here, so through the trunk, when the elbows drop low, and obviously when the knees don't track very well over the toe, it makes it difficult for us to use the quadriceps to stand up and keep the torso upright, which is why we'll see as he's coming through the mid phase here, a little bit of a rock. But regardless, like I said, because that timing was so good in keeping the hook grip, he catches that first bounce, and he's efficient as he can be with his technique. One thing that I want to touch on just in terms of what's happening now at this point in the lift is you'll see as Roman stands up at the lift, you'll see him reset his hands and get the bar off the windpipe. I think this is really good because it allows you to take a nice breath and get into a good set position for the jerk. What you'll also notice is the timing in which he does this off. So you'll see the bar come off the windpipe here. He resets his hands, which you can see happening here, which is also good. Always much easier to do when you don't release the hook grip after the clean. And then after he's repositioned the bar, you'll see that he brings the foot back in. This is super important. Always reset the hands first and then follow with the grip afterwards. Jerking from a narrow stance that we're seeing with his feet here is really important. When we're jerking with a narrow foot position, what this allows us to do is think about aiming diagonally in the split position, whereas when the feet are too wide, the likelihood of the feet crossing will increase massively. So that's why we see a great amount of movement out into the receive position for Roman, and he's absolutely rock solid in terms of what the lower body is doing in the jerk. Just coming back a split second to have a look at what happens throughout the dip and drive here. What you'll notice is that throughout the dip and drive, one thing that he does really well again here is he maintains a good angle, position with the elbow from the top of the dip to the bottom of the dip and then back to his driving point. You see how these angles are the same? This means that the legs are doing all the work. This is why you'll see that he's now at this point here. He's up on to his toes here, whilst the bar's still in contact with the body, which means the legs are doing a lot of the work. And what you'll also notice, and this is quite a subtle thing here, but you'll see how the wrist is pinched already in, like pivoted back like so in this position. It makes it much easier for you to drive through the bar when this is staying the same and pivoted back the whole way to the lockout. It really reduces the amount of drag or the bar coming back down on you after you reach the top position. You see how that bar hardly dips back down? It stays at the top height. It's because he kept his wrist pinned from this position all the way to the overhead. So that's super helpful for anyone that struggles with lockout or the bar dragging back down. In terms of positioning on the split, the bar's a little bit out in front of the body, but all in all, I wouldn't say it's a huge amount because he recovered so well front foot, back foot. I'd say that more than anything, that issue is more due to the fact that he's having to extend through as much through his upper back and through his shoulders to get to the bar to the overhead position, because he doesn't have a great range of motion in mid to upper back. I'll commonly see this, and I don't know Roman too well from his CrossFit standard, but based on the fact that he's just won the Dubai Fitness Championships, I'm gonna say he's pretty good all-rounder. I generally find with CrossFit athletes that have good gymnastic skills, have poor mobility in the mid to upper thoracic. So when I'm thinking about what I would recommend for Roman in terms of to help him with his Olympic weightlifting a little bit more, I would love to see him adding in some more loaded mobility exercises. I'm sure he is doing some mobility work, but I see athletes that move like him a lot of the time that are stretching, but aren't doing weightlifting specific mobility drills under load. So things that I'd love to see Roman start to do would be things like close grip overhead squats. I'd love to see him do front rack SOTS press. I'd love to see him do some more pulling exercises from a bent over position. I'd love to see him do things like single arm dumbbell overhead squats and single arm dumbbell SOTS press. I'd love to see him doing more mid to upper thoracic mobility work, just to free up that upper back, but also increase range of motion at the ankle. Combination of these two things would really help Roman as an athlete, regardless of what he's doing from a periodization standpoint with his Olympic weightlifting. I guarantee he's probably following a weightlifting program of some essence, because he struggles with this in comparison to other events, clearly, because he was in the top 5 in all the other events apart from this weightlifting one, so it's definitely a weak link for him. That would be my best bit of advice. But Roman, congratulations. I know you're a fan favorite and you've done amazing again to win this event, so big props to you, brother. So the second athlete that we're going to be doing a review of on today's analysis session is Mir Hesketh. Mir Hesketh is married to Phil Hesketh, who's actually from the UK. I think he's also a great CrossFitter. I'm not sure if he still competes now or whether he just coaches Mir, or they both train together, but regardless, Mir is a mother and one of the strongest mums out there, and equally an extremely good Olympic weightlifter, as she is a CrossFit athlete too. So the lift that we're gonna be taking a look at for Mir is a 87.5 kilo power snatch, which is absolutely incredible. This placed Mir as part of added to her clean and jerk in second place in the weightlifting event. She did make both her lifts as well on first attempt, which tells me there's probably a lot more in the tank. And the fact that she ended up power snatching this instead of full snatching tells me that she probably snatches well in excess of 100 kilos. First thing that you'll notice is setup position. I really like a lot of the things that are happening in this setup position. One of the key things that I look for when I'm finding the correct setup position in the snatch or even in the clean for an athlete who is relatively tall or short, a good rule of thumb is to think about creating a box at this point here. So when I think about creating a box, I'm trying to have my knees directly above my feet, and I'm trying to maintain tension in this position when I'm pushing away. By doing this and trying to hold this position as you pull away, it's a really great way to make sure the legs are doing the work from the floor and to maintain tension in the lower body whilst keeping the upper body as relaxed as possible. And this is why you'll see is as Mir takes the tension and initiates this lift from the floor, the upper body stays really relaxed and there's no loss of position in the upper body and how it's moving, which is really good. And I will put a lot of that down to how well she keeps this lower body positioning in her setup. As the bar reaches knee height, there's a couple of things to take into account here. We see really good relaxing of the arms, and like I said, a lot of that comes down to that setup position again. You'll see that the bar is staying nice and close as it's passing the knee, and it's staying nice and close in contact with the body through this middle phase of lift. So if you watch how the bar tracks here, as she starts to open up at this point, so when I talk about opening up, I'm thinking about the chest is starting to lead now here and open up. You'll see the bar stays super close here up the thighs, which makes it really easy for Mia, one, to keep her arms relaxed, and two, to stay on flat feet here before extension. The better that you can stay on flat feet, maintain bend at the knee, keep the shoulders directly above the bar and the arms relaxed, the easier it is to utilize legs through this extension phase, which is why we see such a good lift on the bar through this middle phase of lift. This technically is impeccable in terms of the position that she's achieving at the top here. This is world class. Only thing that I'd probably add to this a little bit for Mia is after she's extended, she's collapsed a little bit through the shoulder. I'd like to see her punching through the chest a little bit more in this top phase, but I'm really clutching at straws here because this is a really nice top position. What you'll see also in comparison to the clean and jerk that we just looked at with Roman is there's great extension here at ankle, knee, and hip. It's really important to have this good extension at the top of the lift. And just to compare this to, like I said, a world-class weightlifter right now, Lu Xiaojun, I'm gonna pull this video up. What you'll see is some really good similarities now between the extension that Lu Xiaojun finds in his top position and the extension that Mia finds here at the ankle, knee, and hip. You see how similar these positions are? But what you'll notice when you look at the lift that I posted from Lu, what I was talking about the chest leading through this middle phase, Mia's collapsing a little bit in her shoulders, whereas if you look specifically at Lu Xiaojun at this top point, do you see how the chest is ahead of the shoulders? This really helps keep the bar just that little bit closer through the middle phase of the lift here. You see how close it is to Lu? Mia's is flying just a very small amount. But like I said, this is a very finer detail that may make the difference between Mia snatching, power snatching 95 or a few kilos more, but it's minor. So coming back to this, let's have a look at what happens in the transition. Mia keeps the backs of the hands pointing in front of her really well through this middle phase of the lift. What you'll see as we transition into the catch here, the feet move a little bit weird off to the side. Not sure what's happening here with the feet, although I'd like to see when we're power snatching, the feet kind of moving out into the receiving position. The reason being is when you've moved the feet out into the received position, you make a little bit more room for the hips to sit between the ankles, and it allows you to keep the torso upright, which can be super helpful when you've got to catch the bar high as opposed to the bottom position. But regardless, you'll see Mia catches this just a little bit below parallel, so it's kind of like a half power snatch, half full snatch. Maybe her mobility doesn't allow her to catch much deeper than that, but regardless, I'd like to see better movement with the feet here into this catch position. She may have past injury or something that's causing her to move like this, but regardless, this is a very, very good lift. So just my key takeaway point for Mia would have just been to add in a little bit more snatch balance into the training program. When I teach athletes to do snatch balance, I get them to start their feet super close and then move out into the receiving position. By doing this, it helps promote good movement as you move into the catch position, particularly on the snatch, and I think this would be helpful for her. The other reason why you may not see as consistent foot movement here for Mia in particular is because her feet are a little bit wider than normal, I'd say, for the snatch, although I wouldn't really want to change that too much because of how good her pulling phase is. I'd just be more conscious of it in the receiving position to see if we couldn't get her getting a little bit deeper. And like I said, this lady has got the capability of snatching well in excess of 100 kilos. So Mia, keep inspiring all the mums out there. You're an absolute boss. That was an incredible lift and well-earned second place in this event. So the final lift that we're going to be analysing from the Dubai Fitness Championships is Lars Jewick. Now, one thing that I noticed straight away for Lars is just how wide he is gripping on the bar in his setup position. Tall athletes or athletes with long arms default to doing this for a couple of reasons. Because they can, one, and two, because they find if they don't, they find it difficult to get the bar to meet them in the correct spot during this middle phase of the lift. Naturally, gripping a little bit wider on the bar is feeling a little bit more natural for a taller lifter sometimes, but what you will find is this really affects lockout, stability, and strength in the overhead, which is the main thing that we're gonna kind of focus on here in particular, okay? So as you can see, as a result of gripping super wide on the bar, what I naturally find is athletes, instead of pushing up and pulling out in this top position, rely on resting their hands on the collar, and this can cause the lockout to become soft when you're in this position, the wider and wider we go. And that's why you'll see what happens here in the arms and the shoulders in this receiving position is we get this kind of U shape made here. This is a result of the shoulders starting to roll forward in this position because it takes a huge amount of rotation in the shoulders to be able to keep externally rotated at this point. The wider you go, the narrower you go, the easier it is to do that. And that is really what affects lockout into this overhead position. In addition to this, or something that would be simple that would help regardless of this wide grip, is as we get into the point here when we're turning over, what you'll notice is how slow the wrist is in turning over at this point. So it takes him quite a while before the wrist is starting to move back into this position overhead. And that can again also make the lockout a little bit soft if we're slow to turn over into this position. I'm almost thinking about pushing up at this point when I receive rather than pulling out at this point. So I'm pushing up to maintain tension. If we compare this now to one of the other lads who's also tall and see the difference that this has in terms of lockout, stability, and strength, you'll kind of get my point, and you'll see the difference in terms of positioning for him when he's gripping nearly on the collars here until he turns over, when he moves out, in terms of distance between bar in the overhead position compared to Lars here. So there's a case for gripping all the way out in the collars if you are extremely tall. So the likes of Lasher or someone like that who's in excess of 6 foot, I'd say, okay, you can get out to the collars. But don't just naturally think if you're 5'10", which is what Lars is, gripping on the collars is the one just because you can reach there, because it will massively affect your lockout position, okay? I think that was the thing that I was trying to get at particularly for Lars in his snatch, because the rest of it actually moves really quite nicely. I'd just like to see a slight narrowing of that grip to improve lockout strength and stability. Anyway, guys, that's my roundup for now of the Dubai Fitness Championships. Again, some more great lifts, some more standard of CrossFit weightlifting going through the roof, which is absolutely incredible. I think this is becoming one of probably the biggest seasons upcoming, where weightlifting's having a huge presence in all of the major events that's happening. I have no doubt we'll see a huge weightlifting event in Waterpalooza that's coming up. And of course, next year's Open, there is going to be weightlifting events in it that you don't want to put yourself in the position of, if your weightlifting is not good, holding you back from making quarters or making semis. And remember, this year in the new format, the chances of people making quarterfinals is going to increase massively. So if you are an athlete that is competitive in CrossFit and is looking to smash your goals in the Open next year, and you know your weightlifting needs a little bit of help, take advantage of the offer that I've got coming up just for January, for 2 months, in the first kind of build up for you guys into the Open, to work with me on having a custom training program created. I'll do that in-depth analysis of your lifting like I've just done here, and we'll build you out some real good structure that's going to ensure that we make you strong and technically proficient going into this year's Open. You can see how important it is, if you want to rank high in these competitions, that you can lift. Guys, thanks again for your time. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe, or even just comment on this video and let me know if you liked it or how I can improve it. I'm still new to YouTube and I want to keep giving you guys better and better videos. Big love.